Welcome to this webinar. The content will be the first 6 weeks of your V-Cert qualification in graphic design. A little introduction about myself. I'm Beth and I work for the provider development team at NCFE and my background is in art and design. I've worked in the design industry and have also taught art and design subjects from level 1 to 6 for nearly 20 years at an FE college. Here are the contents of the webinar. We will look at an introduction to the qualification and the initial assessment of your learners, along with the focus for the first 6 weeks on Content Area 1, laying the foundations down for the year to structure strong understanding of the qualification terminology used within graphic design discipline, focusing on the main components and principles of graphic design, along with the visual language of graphic design. Qualification overview. Let's revisit the qualification delivered at our face-to-face events and our Discover webinars. The qualification structure and content areas, the overview of the guided learning hours, the 60-40 weighting, the non-exam and the exam assessment, along with the timings. There are 6 content areas within graphic design, and we will be focusing this webinar on Content Area 1 for the first 6 weeks, the components of graphic design, giving your learners a strong understanding from the very offset for the qualification, the core learning and understanding of the subject. Overview recap of the qualification structure. The typical 2-year delivery model, which is the same for every V-Cert. This is only a suggestion and is to help illustrate the new structure so you can visualize how it's going to work for you. Looking at the 2-year, the NEA could be delivered at different starting points of the 2nd year, but it must be completed by the end of April. The 1st year is very much about laying the knowledge in preparation for the 2nd year, and we will concentrate on the first 6 weeks, focusing on the foundations of the V-Cert. A recap on the non-exam assessment and the exam assessment key points. The NEA covers assessment objectives 1 to 5, and the EA covers assessment objectives 1 to 3. The NEA is released in September, but can be delivered later as long as it's completed in April, and the EA is set in May-June time. Assessment objectives. AOs provide a consistent framework for learners and applied synoptically, allowing learners to show their knowledge, understanding, and the skills from across the full breadth of the qualification. The AOs will be assessed against the content in our technical awards. They are AO1, Recall Knowledge and Understanding, AO2, Apply Knowledge and Understanding, AO3, Analyze and Evaluate Knowledge and Understanding, AO4, Demonstrate and Apply Technical Skills and Processes, and AO5, Manage and Evaluate the Project. Content Area 1. We will look in more depth in Content Area 1 and how it could be delivered over the first 6 weeks. This will be our main focus to lay the foundations of your learners' knowledge and understanding. Content areas can be delivered in any format and alongside each other. However, to get the best start point for your learners, we will focus on Content Area 1, giving them that depth of understanding carried out throughout the qualification. Content Area 1, Components of a Graphic Design. Here's an example from the specification, and it covers the following: components, line, color, tone, composition, typography, imagery, visual language of a graphic designer, and graphic design principles. Week by week overview, breaking down each area and following the design process, giving your learners the starting knowledge for the now and the lifelong learning. Each area leading into the next with the core understanding of graphic design. Week 1, Introduction and Initial Assessment. Week 2, Components, Line and Color. Week 3, Tone and Composition. Week 4, Typography and Imagery. Week 5, Visual Language of a Graphic Designer. Week 6, Graphic Design Principles. Each area given the long-term understanding of design. Week 1, Initial Assessment and Induction to the Qualification. How your induction session could be delivered. You could introduce your learners to the qualification, your expectations and their learning journey. Qualification overview and the content areas. Learner books, digital files, what format you expect your learners to present their work in. Archive work, this could be GCSE examples if you don't have any V-Cert examples at this point. Show a visual roadmap of the qualification, giving that overview visually. Equipment needed or what equipment your school has. Online resources and websites. Online apps that your learners could use alongside their work. Your new cohort. You may have taught your year group before in previous years, but see this as a brand new year, a new cohort. What are their experiences over the summer? Consider the list and what could impact their learning. All their previous knowledge, skills, behaviours factor into this. This could be done through quizzes and questionnaires, KWL charts, a pizza wheel where learners colour in how confident they feel in different areas from written to drawing skills. See each learner at different points of the mountain. Week 2, breaking down each component of graphic design, focusing on line and colour. The arrangements of the components could be switched around if you prefer for your learners. This is a suggestion and doesn't necessarily have to be delivered in this order. In week 2, as a starter activity, begin looking at the components of a graphic design, getting your learners familiar with the terminology. This could be delivered by creating a visual wall, which you can refer to over the qualification and added to over the year in your classroom, if possible. Over the next 3 weeks, learners could add to the wall and their books, creating a bank of terminology, a visual dictionary. This could be done digitally or hand-rendered, looking at line, colour, tone, composition, typography and imagery, centred around classroom discussion, what it means to be a graphic designer. This will give learners a strong understanding for the 2 years. If components have previously been delivered in Year 9 or before, recap, test knowledge. This will link to the AO1, recall knowledge and show understanding. Colour is everything in design. In classroom discussion, along with a worksheet, what colour means to your learners. Record on the visual classroom wall and learners' own books. Learners could add an image to the wall of their favourite colour. The colour wheel could also be displayed. The worksheet could include what certain colours remind them of as a graphic design and give examples from food packaging to online apps. Getting learners to practice annotating meaning behind the use of colour. Discuss the psychology of colour and how it might make them feel. All areas don't need to be covered at this point. This is a starting point and should be built upon throughout the year. Line. Explore line through hand-rendered and digital workshops. What line can learners create with a pen and a pencil? What line can learners create digitally? This could be any digital software that your learners are comfortable and confident with, along with what your school has access to. Explore the use of line and discussion around the importance of line in graphic design. This is an example and can be delivered as you feel appropriate for your learners. The application to tasks will reflect the skills level of your learners, referring back to that initial assessment and the point of the mountain they are at. Week 3, tone and composition. Drawing exercise to explore tone. How to create tone with hand-rendered drawings, looking at depth and definition to create shapes, cross-hatching, further development from line workshop. Within this workshop, you could explore drawing simple shapes or giving learners a range of objects to draw from. This could be objects within your classroom, packaging, or around the school building, buildings to trees. Explore a range of media from pen, pencil to coloured pencil. Discuss what makes a good designer. Learners could record their through mind mapping as a group task. Find images or items that show good and bad composition within graphic design. Mind mapping around what makes a good design, what composition works well on different types of graphic design. Continue adding to the learners' books and reference the classroom wall dictionary. Week 4, Typography and Imagery. Typography, explore words. What do they mean? How would your learners draw this word if it was a visual? The power of a word. Make a reference to powerful graphic logos that speak volumes. Look at different fonts. Your learners could produce hand-rendered and digital typography of a quote that inspires them or even their name, familiarizing themselves with typography means and the power of the word. Classroom discussion around imagery. Digital, animation, hand-rendered, printed, photographed. Set a task to find different images from digital to hand-rendered. Discuss the different types of graphic design areas. Look at shapes and symbols, how images work with text, find examples, add into their books and show examples on the classroom wall. Your learners could start selecting an image and digitally manipulating this image using the computer or an app, depending on your school's access to software, along with your learners and their access to phones. Start looking at image manipulation. Learners could be introduced to how to crop an image using phone apps or computer program. Deliver a level of your learners that they are already familiar with cropping an image. Refer back to the initial assessment. Set tasks with further depth for advanced learners. You could also deliver a workshop at this point. This could be a mono or lino print if you felt your learners needed a hand-rendered task at this stage in the first 6 weeks. Select the area that you feel your learners would find beneficial and focus at this point. Week 5, Visual Language of Graphic Design. What does communication, aesthetics, and contextual factors mean within graphic design? Focus on these 3 key words through classroom discussion and revisit previous weeks, recalling terminology used. Looking first at communication. Meeting AO1, recalling knowledge and understanding. This could be done through a mind map activity or worksheet. Show visual examples of graphic design communication in various formats. What do certain words mean in graphic design and what's the meaning of the message? Aesthetics. Again, show visual examples. You could explore textures through a paper workshop, folding, crumpling, or a pattern repeats workshop centered around classroom discussion. Social factors. This could be a mind map activity or a worksheet. Social factors and how they impact graphic design. Again, show visual examples, select images that trigger discussion, centered around classroom discussion, leading into considering a customer or client's needs. Continue to keep adding to your classroom wall and books, building up the learner's reference to recall knowledge. Customer client profile. Get your learners to think about their market level through a workshop activity. Who's their customer? Create customer profiles and consider a range of different products for their customer. For example, different age groups would have different market levels and overall appearance of design. What appeals to different social group factors? Week 6, Graphic Design Principles. The final part of Content Area 1, again to be revisited throughout the year. Graphic Design Principles. A teacher-led activity explaining the components used across the discipline. Show examples of illustration, packaging and signage. Refer back to the customer and the social factors. Discuss keywords with graphic design principles. This could be recorded in books, digital or hand-rendered, or on a worksheet. Also added to that classroom wall for that bank of knowledge and reference. Graphic design principles look at design elements that are opposite. The learner could find visuals showing this, discussion around elements of design, show examples that define the meaning of visual principles. As before, it could be hand-rendered or digital, with learners' books or worksheets alongside with that classroom wall for reference. Graphic design principles continued. Have further examples of graphic design work. Discuss all the areas of graphic design from illustration to web design. Learners could gather images for each area, show learners good and bad examples, refer back to their fictional customer, get them to find 3 good and 3 bad examples and annotate why they think this, getting the learners familiar with annotating reflective written work behind graphic design. Taking all the knowledge covered and the terminology of a graphic designer over the previous weeks, your learners at this point should have a strong understanding of the components of a graphic design and will probably want to start designing. Give them a taster session and put their knowledge into practice with a workshop designing a logo of their name to round up the lesson and the first 6 weeks. The next steps. Following on from the areas covered as an introduction and the core knowledge and understanding of graphic design, content area 1, revisit throughout the year, covering the next content areas, referring to the components in further depth, the visual language and the graphic design principles. Remember, content areas can be delivered together and in an order you feel works for your learners. This is something Ofsted really want to see, how you take a curriculum and adapt it to your school and your learners' needs. The next steps for delivery, covering all the content areas and preparing your learners ready for year 2, having that strong knowledge and understanding for the NEA and the EA. Resources and support. Our NCFE website, within the V-Cert page, you'll find resources to support your preparation for delivery and assessment of this qualification. It currently includes qualification specification, fact sheet, sample assessment materials and sample mark schemes, which are also available on QualHub. We also have our on-demand webinars on the NCFE YouTube. Lastly, links to refer to if you require any further information and support. These links include the V-Cert page on our website and our CST if you need to contact them for any further guidance on this qualification. Thanks very much for listening.